Some people walk into a room and immediately start talking. Others walk into a room and start noticing. They notice the pause before someone answers a question, the slight tension behind a smile, the way two people laugh, then fell, but never quite look at each other. Most conversations pass quickly, but for quiet observers, nothing really passes. It stays. And if you're one of those people, you've probably experienced something strange. You often understand what people are feeling before they say a word, sometimes before they even realize it themselves. And yet, somehow, the people around you rarely realize that you see all of it because you're quiet. So they assume you're not paying attention. But the truth is, you're paying attention to everything. And that ability can feel both powerful and exhausting at the same time. Pause for a moment and think about this. Have you ever sat quietly in a conversation while everyone else talked and realized you could almost predict how the interaction would unfold? Who would interrupt? Who would get defensive? Who was secretly uncomfortable? You didn't analyze it on purpose. It noticed. This is something many quiet observers experience. They're not silent because they have nothing to say. They're silent because their mind is busy processing what everyone else is expressing, not just through words, but through tone, through pauses, through body language, through subtle emotional signals most people overlook. Imagine walking through life with a kind of emotional radar. You notice the slight change in someone's voice when they say they're fine. You sense the tension between two people sitting across from each other. You feel the shift in the atmosphere of a room before anyone speaks about it. While others focus on the conversation itself, your mind is scanning the emotional landscape underneath it. And over time, something interesting begins to happen. You start understanding people sometimes more clearly than they understand themselves. You see patterns in behavior. You notice contradictions between what someone says and what they feel. You sense insecurity behind arrogance, sadness behind humor, distance behind politeness. But here's the strange part most people don't talk about. The more observant you become, the harder it becomes to pretend you don't see things. You notice when someone is lying to themselves. You notice when someone is performing instead of being genuine. You notice when a conversation is drifting away from the truth. And that awareness changes the way you experience people. Pause for a moment and reflect. Have you ever listened to someone talk while quietly realizing that the story they're telling isn't really the real story? Maybe they say they're happy, but their voice sounds tired. Maybe they say they're confident, but their eyes keep looking down. Maybe they say everything is fine, but something about their energy says otherwise. Quiet observers live inside that space between words and reality, and because of that, they often become the people others unconsciously open up to. Have you ever noticed this? You barely say anything in a conversation, yet someone suddenly starts telling you something deeply personal, something they didn't even plan to share. It's almost as if people feel safe around you, but they don't always understand why. The reason is simple. Most people are used to being listened to only halfway. People nod while waiting for their turn to speak. People respond without really absorbing what was said. But quiet observers do something different. They watch, they listen, they absorb. And that kind of attention is rare, so when someone finally feels it, their defenses slowly drop. But there's another side to this ability, and it's a side many quiet observers quietly struggle with. Understanding people too well can make relationships complicated because once you see someone clearly, you can't unsee it. You start noticing patterns that others ignore. You see when someone keeps repeating the same emotional cycles. You see when someone pushes people away out of fear. You see when someone pretends not to care because caring feels risky. And sometimes that awareness creates a strange loneliness, not because you dislike people, but because you see layers in human behavior that many conversations never reach. While others are enjoying the surface, Your mind is exploring what lies underneath, and that can make it harder to feel fully present in ordinary interactions. Pause and reflect on this. Do you sometimes feel like you're watching people rather than fully participating with them, like you're sitting slightly outside the conversation, observing how everything unfolds? If so, there's a reason for that. Many quiet observers develop this ability earlier in life than they realize. Maybe you grew up in an environment where emotions shifted quickly. Maybe you learned that paying attention to mood changes helped you avoid conflict. Maybe you became the person who sensed tension before it exploded. Children are incredibly good at adapting to emotional environments, and sometimes the way they adapt is by becoming extremely perceptive. They learn to read tone, they learn to watch expressions, they learn to sense when something is about to change. Those skills stay with them long after childhood ends. So now, years later, your brain still does the same thing. It scans, it observes, it reads the room, even when nothing dangerous is happening. Even when you're just sitting in a cafe with friends, your mind quietly gathers information. And because of that, you often understand emotional dynamics faster than others. You see the patterns, the motivations, the insecurities, the hidden stories behind behavior, which brings us to an important realization. Understanding people deeply doesn't always make life easier. Sometimes it makes it more complicated because empathy and awareness can blur boundaries. You feel what others feel. You carry emotional information that wasn't meant to be yours. You see someone struggling internally, even when they hide it, and part of you wants to help. But another part of you knows that not everyone is ready to be understood, and that creates a delicate balance. Quiet observers often learn something important over time. Just because you understand someone doesn't mean it's your responsibility to fix them. You can notice someone's pain without absorbing it. You can recognize someone's pattern without becoming trapped in it. You can see people clearly while still protecting your own peace. And when quiet observers learn that balance, their ability becomes something remarkable. They become people who see others deeply, people who offer presence instead of noise, people who notice what most overlook. In a world where everyone is trying to be heard, they become the rare ones who truly listen. And that kind of presence can change conversations, change relationships, sometimes even change lives. So if you're someone who has spent years quietly observing people, don't assume your silence means weakness. Sometimes the quietest people in the room are the ones who understand everything that's happening inside it. And once you learn how to protect your energy, that quiet awareness stops feeling like a burden and starts becoming one of your greatest strengths.